Hello everyone, and this is not physics. You know, I may have to make a channel called This Is Not Physics. Many of my physics students were always afraid that physics was going to be really hard for them. And in fact, it really wasn't. I made it as easy and as clear as I possibly could. Often I would get comments that they liked my course. In fact, many students said it was their favorite course. But still, in this video, this is not physics. What am I going to do in this video? Well, I'm going to dismantle, improve, and reassemble a bookcase. Specifically, this bookcase right here. So let's take a closer look. Here's the bookcase, which I'm going to dismantle. And here's a second bookcase that I made. Before we do that, you'll notice here, there was a cabinet here where I kept all my papers. I removed that cabinet, as you can still see the footprint. And this bookcase will be the topic of this video. But looking over here, I still have a variety of textbooks still remaining, as you can see. I made this bookcase first. Over time, I needed a second one, so I built this one. And this one is mostly made out of recycled wood, pallet wood, coming from Associated Spring. I may talk about that one in the future. This particular one, however, I made the sides out of tongue and groove. Just glued them all together, made it to the size that I'd wanted. The shelves themselves, well, I bought these shelves here in what was once called beaver lumber. Give you an idea, if you live here in Hamilton, how long ago that was. I gave it a trim, as I did on the top. Put in a dado groove in order to house this metal strip to hold the shelves. And here we are. The only way I'm going to get this from where it is right now, which is on the second floor of my house, is to dismantle it. So I want to bring it downstairs and put it into another room. Into dismantling it, when I was looking at it, this has warped right along here. Not badly. And here we can use some improvements. So I thought this might be a good time to improve on the top. And there may be other improvements I can make as we go down. I'll look at it after I disassemble it. So I put a couple of screws, well actually 4 screws, one on each side at the top. It's a Phillips head. In today's world, I'm sure many people would just take out a cordless drill and remove the screws using a cordless drill, but I got a special cordless drill. Here it is. May take me a little longer, but it's good exercise. I'm in my workshop, and this is a router table that I made. It's designed to flatten boards since I don't have a planer. It's got a bed. I put my router on this. It's a little stiff right now. Put the board on here, put the router on top of this, and I'll go ahead and flatten the board. Speaking of which, over here is the top board from the shelf. This part of the table right here is completely flat. It just happens to fit the width of my router table, but it's a little bit proud, a little bit high right here, so I'm going to have to do a modification. This board right here, you can see, is not flat. And I'm hoping to flatten it. It's pretty, oh, there it is right there. So it's rocking a little bit. You can see here. The idea of this table right here is to make one surface completely flat. I can feel a bow. It sort of goes bowed like this. Flatten this out. But before I can do that, I'm going to have to modify these rails. They're a little bit too short. The board is too high up, too proud. I happen to have this board right here, which is perfect. It's an old 2x4 I got from a pallet. You can still see the nail holes. And it just so happens it's the right width and the right length in order so I can add some height to the outside rails. You can see, just a matter of determining how high I want to make this. Probably going to make it the thickness of these braces on either side. And that'll give me a gap underneath right here in order to put the router table. I get this on here, there it is. Such that I can put the router on top. I'll have a little bit of gap so I can drop the tool bit. So let's go ahead and rip a board and put it on here. I have the second rail installed. It's glued and it's being clamped. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clamps. I'm going to drill some holes for screws to permanently keep this in place. I'll just do this 7 times and put in the screws. So off camera, I went ahead and I mounted one rail. Here's the other one to be done on this side. I put glue in between the two. And you can see some of the glue squeeze out. Clamped it down and I put in some screws. I countersunk the screws such that they don't interfere with the sled as it goes back and forth. Now I just gotta do the same to this one. I could change the drill bit in the drill. Put in one for screws. I'm using Robertson's. These are Canadian screws. The Robertson head is a Canadian screw, whereas the Phillips is American. Obviously, I prefer the square slot, the Robertson. But instead of using the drill all the time, a simple hand tool will suffice. I've completed assembly of the rail on the right hand side. The one on the left here was done earlier. As you can see, I am using my table saw. There's my table saw as my bench. Table saw actually doubles as a table saw and a bench. I have a level here on top of my table saw, and let's have a look at how level the table saw is. It bubbles a little to the left. The floor in my garage is nowhere near level. But then let's have a look and see how I did on the rail with respect to the table saw. I would say they're about the same. I go down, because these two rails on the left and right need to be parallel to each other and at the same height in order for me to do what I'm going to do with this, and that's to flatten a piece of board. looking pretty good with respect to the table saw and the floor, of course. So, well, I'll just have to wait for all the glue to dry and give this a run. Here it is. It's almost ready to go. The two rails now have been screwed in and the glue is fairly well dried. It's been several hours. This is my router. It's an ancient router. I must have bought it more than 30 years ago. It's a Craftsman. You can see here upside down. I am a Craftsman fan. As you can see, my table saw is also a Craftsman, as are many of my tools. Unfortunately, Sears doesn't exist anymore. The Craftsman brand is still sold, but not as good. Even my vacuum cleaner, which I bought recently at Lowe's, is also a Craftsman. It's a low-budget, medium-quality brand, I should say. I'm happy with it. Does what I need it to do. And I've set up the bit right here. It's a flush bit. So that doesn't give me a flat cut or a flush cut. I'm going to take this and put it onto my sled, like so. The sled will go back and forth, and it'll plane any high spots once I properly set it up. Well, let's see what happens. It's all set. Here it is. Now I set there's the tool, and you can just see it under here. Here's the low spot. So I'm not going to take any material off the low spot. If I move this across, the router that is, I go across, it starts to hit the high spot, and that's what I want to remove, that high spot where the bow is right here. And it should be low on the other side as well. Well, all I gotta do now, just wait for some of this caulking here to dry and give it a go. It's all set up and ready to go. I'm going to start at this end. I'm going to work my way back and forth, all the way down this plank. It's noisy, so I got earplugs on. It's also going to be dusty, and cover myself up a little bit. So here's a low spot. This is where the high spot begins, and it's going to flatten it out all the way down. So I'm about halfway through the board. You can see it's flattening right here. I got to work on that edge. I got to make sure I don't touch that rail. And if I pull this back, you can see the slight lip. So there's very little being cut there, very little cut on this side. This is actually getting a little heavier right now. So I'm removing this crown. Just a bit more to go. Here it is. It's all done. You can see where all the high spots were. This is still a little bit on the low side, but that's all right. I'm not going to take off any more wood. Now let's see how flat it is. Looks good. I have to give it a hand sanding to remove all of these little lines. Well, we'll go over here to where the light is. Check it for flatness. Looks good. If you look at the bubble, that looks good as well. So all is good. So I did some sanding. Here it is. And it's looking good. It's flat, it's smooth. Now I just need to figure out what it is I want to do with it next. Maybe give it an oil or a varathane, or I may just leave it as is. Time will tell. Here is the board that I just finished flattening. If we look at it, this is the underside that I did. I'm not too concerned about the top side. But when you look at a bookcase, you're going to come here because it's so tall, you're going to be looking up. So you're going to see this part. And more importantly, you're going to see the fit right here between these two boards. Before, this one was raised up on both sides because it was bowed. Now it's flat, sitting right across. This particular board right here also going to need a straight cut and get a better fit. And if over on the opposite side, clearly this board right here, the vertical board here also needs to have a proper cut across it. I will do that later in order to get a better fit. And the reason I do this is because, again, when you look at a bookcase, say take this one for instance, you look up, you see that corner. And this one is higher yet, so you're going to see this corner and the fit in that corner, well, it will affect the quality of the bookcase. Went ahead and squared up this piece. Here is the sideboard from the shelf. I've had to do a little bit of jerry rigging here. Needed to make this level, as you can see. So I've had to prop up here on my step ladder some boards, get it to the same level as this, square it all up right here on this fence, and I went ahead and made the cut. Nice clean cut. You can see the tongue and groove of the construction of this particular panel. And the opposite side, well, it's considerably rougher cut. I'm going to go ahead and make this to proper length and cut this end as well. I have reset it. That end has been cut. Now I'm going to cut the final end. I'm going to make it to 70 inches. I have a measuring tape and I got it connected up to the other end. I'm going to follow this trough. The dado actually is what it is, and I'm going to bring it in right at 70 where the laser beam is. So I'll cut them both at 70 inches long. Here it is in its new location. And as you can see, I squared this up so everything matches nicely, and same with the other side. I squared up this board. As you can see behind me, the bookcase is now gone, as well as a steel cabinet that I had here where I had a variety of papers and notes. What's left now is this second bookcase. You can see I'm having a hard time parting with many of these physics books, chemistry books, and some math books down at the bottom. In time, that I will clear off this particular bookcase as well. And instead of relocating this bookcase to another place or another room in my house here, I think I'm just going to recycle this wood and turn it into some other project in the future.